Welcome. In today's video, I'm going to redo this old bench. It's pretty shaky. The slats are rotted, some of them, but it has a good back that is iron and the legs are iron, so I can just clean them up and give them a fresh coat of paint. So let's get started. I started out by taking the boards off the bench. I must say, usually taking things apart is easier than putting it back together. But with this bench, some of the screws were rusted together, and so it took a little while to get all the boards off. Usually in my projects, I'm recycling or reusing something. I am going to replace the boards on the bench with new treated lumber, but I'm going to save the old boards to use for another project. Once everything was apart, I started to sand and clean the iron on the bench. I had a wire brush that I hooked to my drill, and I began to brush the bench, the iron, where the rust was, and go over it lightly on all the areas. This took a little while because the back of the bench had quite a detail, and the sides were really dirty. I thought that I could get the iron pretty clean with just the wire brush, but the bench had been sitting out underneath an oak tree for a while, so it was pretty dirty. I went ahead and just washed it down really good with some cleaner and scrubbed it really well. It's time to paint, so I just took a can of white Rust-Oleum spray paint and coated the back and the two sides really well with the paint. It took probably 3 cans, 1 can for each bench side and 2 cans for the back. Now it's time to stain the boards that I'm going to put on the bench. I went ahead and stained them before I put the bench together because, one, if I stained it after the bench was put together, I would most likely get the stain on my new white paint, and 2, it would be very hard to get in between the boards once they were put together. When staining furniture, I usually dip a rag in the stain and then wipe it on the wood. However, with this, I just went ahead and took a paintbrush and brushed on the stain and then wiped off any extra that was left. Doing this allowed the stain to sit on the wood for a little bit longer, so it was absorbed and the color was a little bit more brilliant without me having to go over the pieces a second time. I didn't let the boards completely dry from staining them. I was just ready to get the bench back together. So here I go. Surprisingly, it was easier to put back together than it was to take apart. I used the old boards for a template, so I knew where to drill my holes for the screws. I did run into a little issue while putting the bench back together. When I was at the store, Lowe's, I could not find the 1x3s. The guy said that they carried them, but he couldn't find them either. So I went ahead and went with 1x4s. So I had to improvise a little bit. The spacing that was drilled in the iron was made for a 1x3. So I did not have enough room to use all 1x4s for the seat. I ended up using 3 1x4s for the middle and then 2 1x2s on each end. I went ahead and dry fitted the boards for the seat, marked where I needed to drill my holes, and then drilled the holes for the screws and put the bench back together. Thanks for watching, and I hope this video has inspired you to do a DIY project of your own.